Awakening the legend. The rusted hull creaked ominously beneath Orion's feet, the human warship's once powerful cannons now gray and silent, its plasma reactors cold and dead, inert like a decaying corpse in a galactic graveyard. Fascinating relic, isn't it? Orion remarked to his colleague, Zephyr, as they strolled through the yawning corridors of the museum's human wing. Hard to believe these hunks of junk held the line against the Zorgon, Zephyr scoffed, his mandibles clicking together. I've seen sturdier ships in a scrapyard. Look at this thing. It's a miracle it even flew. He rapped his knuckles on the flaking paint of the UES Indomitable's nameplate. No singularity drive, no plasma cannons, not even a basic AI. What were the humans thinking? Orion chuckled. You have to remember, this was centuries ago. Humanity was still in its infancy then, barely scratching the surface of the stars. They fought with what they had. He traced a hand over the pitted metal, fingers catching on a cluster of deep scars gouged into the dreadnought's flank. Take these, for example. Battle of Tannhauser Gate. One ship against an entire Zorgon invasion fleet. Held them off for 3 days to evacuate the colony. Impossible, Zephyr scoffed. No primitive boat could last an hour against the Zorgon, let alone 3 cycles. Impossible for us, perhaps, Orion smiled cryptically. But Captain Evans had a saying back then. The difficult we do immediately. The impossible takes a little longer. A deep, bone-shaking thrum suddenly reverberated through the ship, cutting him off mid-sentence. Lights flickered to life on consoles long dormant. The deck lurched under their feet. Zephyr stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. What's happening? Is this some kind of museum trick? Orion didn't answer. He was staring at the main view screen, where a harsh white glare was coalescing into the visage of a human male. Chiseled jaw set in determination beneath a cap emblazoned with archaic gold braid. This is Captain Craig Evans of the UES Indomitable. The figure spoke, voice booming through the ship. To all human survivors hearing this message. The figure flickered, replaced by a field of whirling stars and the looming shapes of Zorgon battle cruisers, plasma cannons glowing an angry red. What was impossible just became our last hope. Orion and Zephyr gaped in stunned disbelief as the dreadnought's engines rumbled to life with a deafening roar. Ancient mechanisms groaned, shaking off centuries of dust as gun turrets swiveled into position. The UES Indomitable, for all its obsolescence and antiquity, was going to war once more, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. Orion led Zephyr deeper into the exhibit hall, stopping before a large holoscreen displaying the icy rings of New Athens. He swept his arm toward the projection. The Zorgon had been launching lightning raids on human colonies for months, striking without warning thanks to their advanced cloaking tech. The Indomitable was part of a task force sent to patrol New Athens, a critical agricultural system. The screen flickered, resolving into the eerie green light of a Zorgon battle fleet emerging from the void. Zephyr watched as the human ships scrambled, caught off guard. The rest of the human vessels were blinded by Zorgon electronic warfare, their sensors useless. But not the Indomitable. Orion tapped a control, zooming in on an image of Captain Evans barking orders, his face smudged with soot. Evans was a frontier kid. He tangled with pirates and raiders his whole life, knew all their dirty tricks. So when the Zorgon struck, he had his crew switch to manual targeting, told them to trust their own eyes. On screen, the Indomitable's gun batteries swiveled, spewing incandescent tracer fire toward the Zorgon fleet. The alien ships turned ponderously, their attention drawn from the fleeing colony ships. Zephyr shook his head. That's insane. Those antique pop guns against Zorgon shields. How the hell did they survive? Evans was a canny bastard, Orion chuckled. He had his engineers overload the fusion reactors, cooking off a massive EMP that fried the Zorgon's fancy electronics. Then, while they were still reeling, he unloaded on them, poured everything he had into their flagship. The holoscreen flashed white, then zoomed in on the Zorgon command ship, It toll pitted and scorched from the Indomitable's brutal assault. The massive vessel listed drunkenly, venting atmosphere before spiraling into the system's sun. That crippled the Zorgan command structure. The rest of their fleet scattered like headless chickens. Orion smiled grimly. That's the thing about humans, Zephyr. They don't believe in acceptable losses. To them, every life matters, and they'll fight like demons to protect their own. Zephyr let out a low whistle. Dan, that's some balls, even for humans. How the hell did Evans even think of that? Orion gave Zephyr a shrewd look. You should know by now. Humans are resourceful as hell in a pinch, especially this crew. He called up a series of damage reports on the display, pointing out the extensive repairs needed to keep the Indomitable fighting. Hull breaches on decks 7, 12, and 19, fires in engineering, life support on the verge of collapse, half the weapon batteries fused into slag. And yet, Orion flipped to a log entry from the ship's chief engineer, a wiry woman with a grease-smeared face, but fiery determination in her eyes. They held it together through spit, duct tape, and sheer guts. Rerouted power, sealed off damaged sections, even turned the ship itself into a weapon. Zephyr cocked his head. What do you mean? Evans was down to his last tricks, so he vented the ship's entire reactor coolant supply, flash freezing a Zorgan frigate that strayed too close. Then he ordered a collision course, using the Indomitable's bulk as a battering ram. The display showed the Dreadnought, pitted and scarred, smashing through the center of the Zorgan formation. Alien ships scattered like leaves before a hurricane. They bought time with blood and steel, Zephyr, long enough for the colony transports to escape, for reinforcements to arrive. The Indomitable limped back to space, docked more wrecked than warship, but they'd done the impossible. Zephyr shook his head in amazement. All to save a few agri-colonies. I don't understand it. Orion smiled grimly. That's the thing about humans, Zephyr. They don't believe in acceptable losses. To them, every life matters, and they'll fight like demons to protect their own. The Battle of New Athens. Orion and Zephyr continued their journey through the museum, stopping before a massive shell casing from the Indomitable's arsenal. Zephyr leaned closer, studying it with a mix of awe and disbelief. So they just stuffed a nuke into their broken gun and shot it at the enemy. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. Orion chuckled, nodding. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And in war, sometimes the craziest ideas are the ones that turn the tide. He gestured to a flickering holo display beside the torpedo, showing grainy footage of the Indomitable's final charge. The battered dreadnought surged forward, its pitted hull glowing cherry red from the strain on its overworked engines. Zorgan plasma fire stitched across its flank, but the ship plowed onward with grim determination. Evans knew it was a one-shot gamble. Orion continued, watching the display. The Indomitable had to get dangerously close to the enemy fleet for the torpedo to be effective. Too far, and the Zorgan point defense would shoot it down. Too close, and the Indomitable would be caught in the blast. On screen, the makeshift torpedo erupted from the Dreadnought's bow, a silent spear of light arcing towards the Zorgan formation. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, a second sun bloomed amidst the alien ships, a roaring sphere of nuclear fire that consumed everything in its path. Zephyr let out a low whistle. Dan, I'm surprised the Indomitable survived that. Barely, Orion said grimly, pointing to the display. The human ship reeled away from the explosion. It hull-pitted and scorched, leaking atmosphere from a dozen rents. That stunt burned out half their engine banks and irradiated a third of the crew. But it worked. The Zorgan fleet was in shambles. Their formation shattered. He shook his head, a note of reverence in his voice. I've studied 100 battles from the Zorgan Wars, seen countless acts of bravery and sacrifice. But the Indomitable's crew, they were a different breed. They knew every action could be their last, but they kept fighting, kept pushing, because they knew what was at stake. Zephyr looked back at the scared torpedo casing, trying to imagine the kind of resolve it took to stare down annihilation and not blink, all to protect a few farms and colonists. I'm not sure I could make that choice. That's the thing about humans, Orion said quietly. When they believe in something, really believe, there's no cost too high, no sacrifice too great. They'll fight to their last breath for what they love. He rested a hand on the torpedo's pitted flank, as if in salute to the fallen. And sometimes, that's all that stands between survival and extinction. Zephyr gave a slow nod, newfound respect in his eyes. Yeah, I think I'm starting to get it. As they moved on, Orion couldn't help but feel a swell of pride. The story of the UES Indomitable was more than just a relic of a bygone war. It was a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity, a spirit that would always rise, no matter the odds. The turning point, Orion and Zephyr's next stop, was a holodeck displaying a detailed map of the New Athens system. Orion activated the display, and holographic representations of the Indomitable and the Zorgon fleet sprang to life, reenacting the climactic battle. Here we are, Orion said, pointing to the map. The Indomitable's final stand. Zephyr watched as the tiny human ship zigzagged through the Zorgon formation, dodging plasma fire and returning volleys with desperate fury. So what happened after the nuke? How did they manage to get out of that mess? Evans wasn't done yet, Orion replied. With the Zorgon fleet in disarray, he seized the moment. He ordered his crew to plot a course straight through the heart of the enemy formation, using the Indomitable as a battering ram. The display showed the human ship charging forward, engines flaring bright. Zorgon ship scrambled to get out of the way, but the Indomitable plowed through, its reinforced prow smashing aside alien hulls like kindling. Zephyr's eyes widened. That's insane. They must have known it was a suicide run. They did. Orion nodded, a somber note in his voice. But Evans had a plan. He aimed for the Zorgon flagship, intending to take out their command structure in one decisive blow. The holographic Indomitable slammed into the Zorgon command ship, the impact rippling through the enemy fleet. The collision crippled both vessels, but it threw the Zorgon into chaos. Without their flagship, their coordination fell apart. Zephyr stared at the unfolding scene, a newfound respect in his eyes. So Evans took out the flagship and left the rest of the fleet leaderless. That's some serious guts. And some serious sacrifice, Orion added. The Indomitable was dead in space, her crew trapped aboard a floating tomb. But they'd done their job. Reinforcements arrived soon after, mopping up the scattered Zorgon ships and securing the system. He paused, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. Evans and his crew knew they weren't coming back, but they went anyway. Because they believed in something greater than themselves. That's the kind of heroism that turns the tide of wars. Zephyr looked at the map, the final moments of the Indomitable etched into his memory. And all of that just to buy time for the colony ships to escape. It's humbling. Orion nodded, a proud glint in his eye. The Battle of New Athens marked a turning point in the Zorgon Wars. Humanity's resilience and ingenuity were on full display, and the Indomitable's sacrifice became a rallying cry for the rest of the fleet. From that moment on, the Zorgon learned to fear human resolve. As they moved to the next exhibit, Zephyr couldn't shake the image of the Indomitable's final charge. The ancient ship's story had left an indelible mark on him, a reminder of the extraordinary lengths humanity would go to protect their own. The legacy of the Indomitable. Their tour concluded in a grand hall filled with statues and plaques honoring the heroes of the Zorgon Wars. At the center stood a towering monument to the crew of the UES Indomitable, their names etched into a wall of gleaming metal. Orion and Zephyr stood before it, the weight of history pressing down on them. These men and women gave everything they had, Orion said quietly. They faced impossible odds and came out the other side, not as victims, but as legends. Zephyr nodded, tracing a finger over the names. It's strange. We look back at these relics, these stories, And it's easy to forget they were real people with real lives and families. They weren't just names on a plaque. That's the power of their legacy, Orion replied. They remind us of what we're capable of, what we're willing to fight for. And that spirit, that determination, is something no amount of time can tarnish. He stepped back, taking in the full scope of the monument. The Indomitable's story is more than just a chapter in a history book. It's a beacon of hope, a testament to the strength of the human spirit. And as long as we remember that, as long as we honor their sacrifice, they'll never truly be gone. Zephyr looked up at the towering figures, their faces set in stoic determination. I get it now. It's not just about the ships or the battles. It's about the people, the courage, the sacrifice. That's what makes humanity indomitable. Orion smiled, clapping his friend on the shoulder. Exactly. And as long as we carry that with us, we'll always be ready for whatever challenges lie ahead. With that, they left the hall, the legacy of the UES Indomitable burning brightly in their hearts, a reminder of the power of human courage and determination in the face of the unknown. The ripples of sacrifice. Days passed since their visit to the museum, but the story of the UES Indomitable stayed with Zephyr, echoing in his thoughts as he went about his duties in the Intergalactic Peacekeeping Corps. The courage of Captain Evans and his crew sparked a deeper curiosity about human resilience and history. One day, he approached Orion in the mess hall, a serious expression on his face. Orion, do you think there's more to learn from the Indomitable story? I mean, beyond just the battle tactics and heroism? Zephyr asked, sitting down with a tray of food. Orion looked up from his datapad, a knowing smile spreading across his face. Absolutely. Every story like the Indomitable's has layers of lessons, not just for military strategy, but for understanding the essence of what it means to be human. Zephyr leaned in, intrigued. Tell me more. What else can we learn from them? Orion set his datapad aside and leaned forward. The Battle of New Athens wasn't just a turning point in the war. It was a defining moment for humanity's role in the galaxy. The Indomitable's sacrifice galvanized not just the human fleet, but also their allies. It showed that humans were not just fighters, but also deeply loyal and willing to sacrifice everything for the greater good. Zephyr nodded slowly. So their actions had a ripple effect. They inspired others. Exactly, Orion continued. After the news of the Indomitable spread, several neutral systems joined the coalition against the Zorgon, tipping the balance of power. The courage of a single ship's crew had a domino effect that changed the course of the war. Zephyr's eyes widened. That's incredible. And here I thought it was just about one battle. Orion smiled. It's never just about one battle. It's about what that battle represents. The Indomitable became a symbol of hope, resilience, and unity, and those are powerful forces. Echoes in the present. Inspired by their conversation, Zephyr started a project to document and analyze the ripple effects of the Indomitable's sacrifice. He spent hours in the archives, piecing together stories of other ships and colonies that were inspired by Captain Evans and his crew. What he found was a rich tapestry of bravery and solidarity that extended far beyond the Battle of New Athens. One story that stood out was that of the colony on Triton VI. After hearing about the Indomitable, the colonists fortified their settlement and managed to repel a Zorgon raiding party with improvised weapons and guerrilla tactics. Their success bought crucial time for a nearby fleet to arrive and secure the area. Zephyr compiled these stories into a comprehensive report, presenting it to the Intergalactic Council. The council members, a diverse group of beings from different species, listened intently as Zephyr spoke of the far-reaching impact of the Indomitable's actions. The courage and sacrifice of the UES Indomitable's crew extended far beyond their final battle. Zephyr concluded. Their legacy inspired countless others to stand and fight, to protect their homes and their loved ones. They showed us that even in the darkest of times, hope can shine through. The council members were moved, and they agreed to commemorate the Indomitable with a new monument on Triton VI, honoring not just the ship's crew, but also the spirit of unity and resilience they inspired. A living legacy. The dedication ceremony for the new monument was a grand affair, attended by dignitaries from across the galaxy. Orion and Zephyr stood at the forefront, looking up at the towering statue of Captain Evans, his gaze fixed on the horizon, a symbol of unwavering determination. As the ceremony progressed, speakers from different species shared their stories of how the Indomitable's legacy had touched their lives. A veteran from the Krellian Defense Force recounted how her unit had fought with renewed vigor after hearing about the human ship's stand. A young human colonist spoke of how the Indomitable's story inspired him to join the Space Navy, determined to uphold the values of bravery and sacrifice. When it was Zephyr's turn to speak, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. Today, we honor not just the crew of the UES Indomitable, but the spirit of unity and courage they embodied. Their actions reminded us that we are stronger together, that no matter the odds, we can overcome if we stand united. He paused, looking out at the diverse crowd. The legacy of the Indomitable is a living one. It lives in the hearts of all who were inspired by their story, in the actions of those who fight for peace and justice across the galaxy. It reminds us that even in the face of impossible odds, hope and courage can prevail. As the crowd erupted in applause, Orion placed a hand on Zephyr's shoulder. "Well said, my friend. The Indomitable's legacy is in good hands." Zephyr smiled, feeling the deep sense of fulfillment. It's an honor to be part of it, and to carry their story forward. The ceremony ended, but the spirit of the UES Indomitable lived on, a beacon of hope and resilience that would continue to inspire generations to come. As long as there were those who remembered, the indomitable spirit of humanity would never fade, shining brightly as a testament to the power of courage, sacrifice, and unity in the face of adversity. The new generation. Years passed, and the story of the UES Indomitable became an integral part of the curriculum for cadets at the Intergalactic Peacekeeping Academy. Every year, new recruits studied the legendary battle, drawing inspiration from the courage and ingenuity of Captain Evans and his crew. Zephyr, now a seasoned instructor, took pride in passing on the legacy of the Indomitable to the next generation. One day, as he prepared for his lecture, he was approached by a young cadet named Aria. Her eyes were bright with curiosity, and she carried a datapad filled with notes. "Professor Zephyr," Aria began, "I've been researching the Battle of New Athens and the Indomitable, and I have so many questions. How did the crew manage to keep fighting against such overwhelming odds? What drove them to sacrifice everything?" Zephyr smiled, seeing a reflection of his younger self in Aria. The crew of the Indomitable believed in something greater than themselves. They understood that their actions could determine the fate of countless lives. It was their unyielding spirit and sense of duty that kept them going. Aria nodded, absorbing his words. "I want to learn more about their tactics and strategies. How did they come up with such innovative solutions under pressure?" "That's an excellent question," Zephyr replied. "Innovation often comes from necessity. Captain Evans and his crew were forced to think outside the box, to use every resource available to them in creative ways. They knew that conventional tactics wouldn't work, so they adapted and improvised." Zephyr spent the rest of the lecture sharing detailed accounts of the battle, focusing on the ingenuity and resilience of the Indomitable's crew. He emphasized the importance of teamwork, adaptability, and the willingness to take risks for the greater good. The cadets listened intently, their admiration for the legendary ship and its crew growing with each passing minute. A new threat. As the cadets graduated and took their places in the Intergalactic Peacekeeping Corps, a new threat emerged on the horizon. A powerful alien race known as the Drathari, driven by a desire for conquest, began to encroach on Allied territories. Their advanced technology and ruthless tactics posed a significant challenge, and the galaxy once again found itself on the brink of war. Zephyr, now a high-ranking officer, was tasked with leading a task force to counter the Drathari threat. Among his team was Area, now a skilled and determined lieutenant. As they prepared for their mission, Zephyr couldn't help but draw parallels to the Indomitable's fateful stand. "Remember what we learned from the Indomitable," Zephyr said during a briefing. "We need to be adaptable, resourceful, and courageous. The Drathari may have superior technology, but we have something they lack: heart and unity." Area nodded, her resolve firm. "We'll make them proud, Professor. We'll show the Drathari that the spirit of the Indomitable lies on." The task force embarked on their mission, navigating through hostile territories and engaging in fierce battles with the Drathari. Zephyr and his team employed unconventional tactics, using their intimate knowledge of the Indomitable's legacy to outmaneuver and outwit their adversaries. The turning point. The conflict with the Drathari reached a critical point as the task force approached the enemy's central stronghold. The Drathari, confident in their technological superiority, had amassed a formidable fleet to defend their position. Zephyr knew that a direct assault would be suicide, so he devised a plan inspired by the Indomitable's daring tactics. "Area, I need you to lead a small team to infiltrate the Drathari command ship," Zephyr instructed. "We'll create a diversion and draw their fire while you disable their shields from the inside. It's a risky move, but it's our best chance." Area saluted, determination gleaming in her eyes. "Understood, sir. We'll get it done." As the main fleet engaged the Drathari forces, Area and her team slipped past the defenses and boarded the enemy command ship. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, avoiding patrols and disabling security systems. The tension was palpable, but Area's focus never wavered. Back on the battlefield, Zephyr coordinated the diversion, his heart pounding with anticipation. The task force fought valiantly, drawing the Drathari's attention and buying precious time for Area's team. Inside the command ship, Area reached the shield generator room. With expert precision, she and her team planted charges and set a timer. As they made their escape, the charges detonated, sending shockwaves through the Drathari fleet. "Their shields are down." Area's voice crackled over the comms. "Now's our chance." Seizing the opportunity, Zephyr ordered a full-scale assault. The task force pressed forward, their determination unwavering. With the Drathari's defenses compromised, the tide of battle turned in favor of the Allies. The enemy fleet began to crumble under the relentless assault. Victory and legacy. The battle was fierce, but the Allies emerged victorious. The Drathari stronghold was neutralized, and their fleet was in disarray. Zephyr's task force had achieved the impossible, thanks to their courage, ingenuity, and unwavering unity. As the dust settled, Zephyr and Area stood on the bridge of their ship, looking out at the remnants of the Drathari fleet. "We did it," Area said, her voice filled with awe. "We honored the legacy of the Indomitable." Zephyr nodded, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. "Indeed we did. The spirit of Captain Evans and his crew guided us. They showed us that even in the darkest times, hope and courage can lead us to victory." News of the task force's triumph spread across the galaxy, reigniting the spirit of unity and resilience that the Indomitable had once inspired. Monuments were erected, and stories were told, ensuring that the legacy of the Indomitable and those who followed in its footsteps would never be forgotten. Zephyr and Area continued to serve, their bond strengthened by the battles they had fought together. They knew that as long as they upheld the values of courage, sacrifice, and unity, the spirit of the Indomitable would live on, lighting the way for future generations. The story of the UES Indomitable had come full circle, its legacy now a beacon of hope and inspiration for all who dared to dream, to fight, and to believe in a brighter future.